Between science and ignorance, there is filler.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Filler. It is May 1st, 2016, as this goes out live. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and of course you can find out more about the show at ParanormalFiller.com. Follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, and, all that social media crap. Tonight's guest is Jenny Stewart. Jenny and I guess you could say we have a history. She was present for the event that kind of changed my paranormal life that you all hear me mention on the show from time to time. Now, I'm going to take a moment to explain what happened at the end of the first hour segment last week. Idiot Boy went to mute the theme music, the ending theme music. Because I was just going from one hour to the next, so I was just going to mute that. And I hit the wrong switch without realizing it and shut my microphone off. So yes, the haunted librarian was talking to herself for about the last 3 minutes of the show. I edited part of that out where she got really confused, but so the archive listeners may not even have noticed, other than the theme music kicked in without me saying a damn word. But on top of that, now those of you who follow me know that we do Scarefest Radio on Friday nights, and Scarefest Radio had to be canceled this past week due to any myriad number of reasons that I'll go more into on the next show. But the only thing I can figure, I wonder, is somebody tell me, is Mercury in retrograde, or is it just my head up Uranus? It's been one of those weeks, but I think I'm gonna take a little me time. Maybe it's supposed to rain this week. Maybe I'll have a little me time to get my ducks in the proverbial row, as they say. So I'm gonna have a good show. Everybody, just stay tuned. And Jenny, welcome to the show.
I am here.
Okay. Take two. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I have no clue what happened. I was listening, and all of a sudden I'm going, he's disappeared.
I'm telling you, technology has decided to make me its bitch. That is the only explanation I have for everything that has gone on the last couple weeks of my life. If it can be destroyed, I have destroyed it in the last 2 weeks. I'm just waiting for one of my computers to just totally crap out.
Oh, take it back out of the universe, because it'll happen. You never put that out, because I think we're in Mercury retrograde, if I'm not mistaken.
See, everybody. I said that. See, you missed that part. See, I said, if we're not in Mercury retrograde, I'm quite sure it's my head up Uranus. It's
no, I think we are. I'm pretty sure we are. Because normally I start, I'm already scatterbrained as it is, but I get really scatterbrained, it seems like, when we're in Mercury.
Well, that gives me something to fall back on anyway. So, Jenny Stewart is to me, you're a psychic medium, but now you do a lot of other stuff. You're a paranormal investigator, of course. You've been at it a while. Now, everybody, Jenny came to my attention. I did an event that you've heard me talk about at the Cardome Center in Georgetown, Kentucky. Now, this was, I had not been in the field a long time at that point, but that was one of my first opportunities to work with a honest-to-God psychic medium. And but also, I happen to know that it was also one of Jenny's first opportunities to see someone use dowsing rods.
Yes.
And so I understand. You made a fan out of me on psychic mediums, and then I made a fan out of you on dowsing rods.
And I actually have a pair now. I actually have my own set of dowsing rods now.
But we'll come back to that. But now, I hate to say your claim to fame, because first of all, have you finished your book yet?
I've got 2 books going, which is really crazy. Secret Sacrifices we kind of shelved for a little bit because we're kind of going back and forth as to how we really want to format it. There's another book called Beyond the Prophecies that was supposed to have been released in March, but unfortunately I had a little inconvenience of a brain aneurysm back in December that kind of pushed it back. So we're doing the editing part of it, and it should be out in what I'm being told is the next 30 to 45 days. Yeah,
those brain aneurysms have a tendency to throw a monkey wrench into the works. I
know, it's an inconvenience.
But I'm so happy to. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm so happy that you're feeling better now. I mean, that was some scary stuff.
That's what they tell me. I don't remember much of it. I think it was harder on my family and my, friends and people that care about me. And I remember when I woke up Monday, because I woke up on Monday, I had the surgery. It happened Thursday. I had surgery Saturday morning, and I woke up Monday. And there was a nurse that I had really connected to. In fact, she went to an event with me a couple weekends ago. And I remember looking at him going, "It's obvious I'm in ICU. Why am I here?" And he's like, "What do you remember?" And I said, "Somewhere along the way, I think somebody told me I had a brain aneurysm." He's like, "You did." And so I can remember just bits and pieces, but I really don't remember a lot of it. I mean, I remember thinking I was at Mansfield State Hospital, and John Zaffis and Chris Maggard and Chris Edmond had talked me into being a trigger object. And somewhere along the way, I thought it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were supposed to be there to untie me, and they didn't show up, and I'm laying there screaming, "I'll never trust you guys again."
Well, imaginary or not, it's probably still not a bad rule to live by.
Exactly. I don't think I'll ever let them do that.
Now, one thing I do want to. Okay, now we're going to hit on Cardome a little bit.
Okay.
You are one of the people that has kept me from going over the edge and calling bullshit on the ghost box. I have to let you know that. I have sat in on so many bad ghost box sessions that if I had not been exposed to the evidence that I've seen you present, sat in on some of your live sessions, and then you kind of led me to hold on to hope and actually get some of my own stuff that I was able to validate. Mm-hmm. But you seem to have mastered it.
I have a weird connection, and I tell people early on. A lot of people don't know I actually named the ghost box the ghost box. We were like the first group to ever use it in an investigative setting, and we had Mike Coletta, who's the UFO geek, who had at that point been doing a lot of the Shack Hack mods and stuff. He was on the show with us, and we kept calling it the Shack Hack, and I'm like, I just don't like that name. So we literally sat there on air, and I came up with Ghost Box. I never thought it would stick. But believe it or not, I was the biggest skeptic when David, who is now my husband, told me, "Oh, I'm bringing this, modified AM FM radio with me, and theory is you can talk to dead people." I'm like, "Oh my God, are you serious? That's such a joke." And that very first Ghost Box session, it was incredible. But I'd had an experience right after that of where one had followed me home, a spirit. And I walked through it, and I remember yelling, "Don't you ever talk to me. You go back wherever you came from. I can't help you." I didn't know I was a medium, and I was supposed to hear them. And I think that they realized that it was okay to talk to me. "Oh, look, we can talk to her on the radio, and she's fine." Just don't talk to her any other way. And I think that's why I was so successful with the ghost box. It's because I was supposed to hear them, but they realized, the box, I would listen to them.
Now, how old were you when all this came about? In particular, when you accepted your gift.
2009, I'll never forget it. It was in January. I used to do a show on Blog Talk, and I would always say I can read deception in people. I can tell you when somebody's lying. I can almost tell you what they're lying about, but I'll never say I'm a psychic or psychic medium. Well, Chip Coffey called me up one day, and he's like, Jenny Stewart, you need to come out of the closet and quit saying that gibberish. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you are a medium. And I'm like, whatever. I still wasn't falling for it. And I had won a reading from a friend of mine, Allie Cheslick. And I was very skeptical, and I love her, and I've told her the story, but I've always been very skeptical until, I can, fill things out myself. And she goes, we're doing this reading that I won, and she goes, oh, and the reason you sit on your hands all the time and you sleep with them underneath of you is because you're a natural healer, and you're protecting your hands. And I'm sitting there going, how did she know? Because I actually had to stop and think about it. I really do sit with my hands under my butt. And she told me, you're a medium. So I opened up, I accepted it, and that was 2009. I was in the middle of probably the most compelling case part of the most compelling case of my paranormal career, which was Henrington. And I think that's why my butt got kicked at Henrington so hard, is because I had the gift and didn't know what to do with it.
See, now I'm surprised because it's, gosh, I forget, when was Cardome? It's been several years now.
2010, I think, or
okay.
11. Mm-hmm.
2010, so that means I'd been in the paranormal field about maybe 2 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really surprised that you had not been fully immersed. We'll say fully immersed. Right. Longer at that point, because, like I said, forget about the Shikac stuff. I mean, just what the communication levels that you were doing that night that kind of fed into what was going on, and so what type of crash? I guess I'm going to ask, what kind of crash course did you take?
Well, I think that for me it was. I don't ever want to say I've reached the level of, I don't even call it mastery, but I think that people can say they're a medium or psychics, and I truly believe that there are some people that really are gifted, but they're not strong psychics or psychic mediums, and I don't know, I just opened up, and once I embraced it, it was like, and I had Lisa Phillips, Mama Lisa. She was a great mentor of mine, and John Zaffis has been a dear friend of mine that's kind of helped me. I would get messages for him, and he would help me kind of guide through that. And so, for me, I think it was just, I embraced it, and once I learned to be comfortable with it, and I accepted it, and I found the confidence level. Because I tell people, when you open up, when you're gifted, one of the first things that you need to really do is A, set your boundaries with the dead, because it can get ugly. And B, you have to believe in yourself and have, the confidence in yourself as a medium or a psychic, because if not, you're never going to open up fully. You'll be too scared to. And so for me, it came natural, I think.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're talking to Jenny Stewart. You're listening to Paranormal Filler.
Hello, friends. Are you exhausted with life? Resent your children? Maybe your husband is cheating on you. Get yourself a tarot reading with Ken Boggle. He can provide you with the clarity, guidance, and answers you need. That's tarotbyken.com. He makes things seem less shitty.
And we're back with Paranormal Filler. My guest is Jenny Stewart, psychic medium, writer, and radio host. Now, that night at, or one of the nights at Cardone, we'll come back to the dowsing because I still brag about that.
That was amazing. Mm-hmm.
But what took me from being a purely technical researcher with a secret guilty passion of dowsing was when the last night we were down in the basement of the place, and the girl that basically got attacked.
Oh yeah.
And you stepped up and helped her along with another gentleman that was there. And I'd been trying. I'd had another medium kept telling me, "Open up, open up, open up," and so that I stood back and stayed out of the way like a good little boy. But the entire time I was watching you all work with this girl, these images were flashing through my mind so strongly that they practically knocked me down. I mean, I couldn't even think straight. So it really, and I couldn't understand why. I mean, this girl was standing beside me. She was doing everything I was doing. She was my protege practically for the weekend. And why she was, attacked, and I never got a good cold chill out of the place. And so that took me on a whole nother journey. But because of what I saw you do that night and the way you worked with her, both psychologically and metaphysically, that's why I really made the assumption at that point that you were an old hat at all this.
Well, and I think I'm an old soul. I think, and I tell you, one of the things, and what had happened that night was there was another gentleman, Frankie. I was actually outside when you guys were in the basement, and it was me and Chris Edmond, and I had and what was so crazy is Frankie was one of those huge, he avoided me at all costs because he didn't want to insult me because he was a big skeptic of mediums as well. And so he had we were doing some attachment work, and he's like twice as tall as me. I'm standing there looking up at him, and I'm reading him, and I'm telling him things about his childhood. And he would go to say something, and I'd say it for him. And from that moment on, he was like, I'll never question, I know you're the deal, And all of a sudden, Chris gets a two-way message. It was somebody asking if they knew where I was. And he said, yeah, she's here with me. And he's like, can she bring her to the basement now, please? The box is asking for her. And it was so crazy because I went downstairs and I sat down on the floor of the ghost. Well, the ghost box said, sit down. And then it asked me if I was comfortable. And then it told me the girl's name. It told me that she had an attachment. She was going to get attacked. And as we're coming up out of the basement and we had just walked outside, she literally doubled over. I mean, it was like she was being attacked physically. And Fradimir, he was there with us. I cannot remember the order, and forgive me, I call it an aneurysm fart. But he helped me do a lot of the energy work that weekend. But I think being a good medium, if you are a strong medium, is also doing what I call spiritual counseling. It's kind of like life coaching, but it's also, I guess, a little bit of counseling mixed in where you're working with a person to try to help them, I guess, get on a more positive route or, more positive path, or you help them understand why things are happening. And I think that's the part of being a medium that I love the most, is that I get to kind of counsel people. And I think it's really cool that I have that gift.
Now, beyond that, now here's where I get to brag, because I was doing my typical dowsing road show, pony show, horse and pony show, and I kept getting. I noticed you kept looking over because you were doing your medium thing. You were asking the questions, and I was getting the answers before you were.
Yes,
and they were matching what you were getting in your head. But then we went upstairs to the very top floor. And that dowsing session in that little cubicle, that was the strongest dowsing session I have ever been a part of.
I have goosebumps right now thinking about it because it was the coolest thing. I still think about that because that was the most, and I talk about it. I've actually included that in some of my lectures before because, I've never seen, because I was very skeptical, like you were, of the box of dowsing rods, and I would watch you work with them, and I'd be like, that is so neat. And then when we went up and did that, and there was like sparks coming off of them, the way they were so charged.
Mm-hmm. I've only seen that effect one other time, and it wasn't as strong. But I kept rubbing my eyes because I thought I just stared at the rods too long. And then,
Exactly.
I looked around the room, and I saw everybody else doing the same thing. And that's when I realized they actually were glowing in the dark.
Yes.
And
it was insane. It was the most intense, but yet so fascinating experience watching that, because I'm like, I think at one point I even asked you, I said, can friction cause it to do that? I was like, come on, Mr. Scientist, does friction do that? Because they were glowing.
The answers are not there, but if everybody who was skeptical of them could stand in on a session like that, and those sessions happen so few and far between.
Yes.
But, I mean, that, up until that, I had not realized their potential until that night. So it took, I mean, it even as a active dowser that was researching them, that night just took me into a whole other realm of the possibilities of what we could do with them.
I think it did a lot of people, because I think at that point we had a whole line of people that were like, can I use them? Can I use them?
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed, too, when we were doing that night, if I remember correctly, there were certain people that it was very effective with that really, they were getting a lot of the same effects that we were. But then there were some people that it just really wasn't. And I think that's energy. I think a lot of that has to do with our own inner energy.
My theory on that is that some people push energy out, and some people are open to it. Mm-hmm. Psychic mediums they're used to accepting energy. So
yes.
They seem to, almost all of them that I've come across are gifted dowsers. But now when I'm dealing with the great unwashed masses, my findings are that if you don't talk to the person, talk to their friends, and you find out what and certain personality types are good dowsers, and other personality types, and I'm not saying they have a bad personality, but it's just a matter of which way the energy flows.
Exactly.
And so that's now I will say in closing on that topic, though, I did a seminar at Scarefest a few years back, and I just picked a volunteer out of the audience. I just first person that raised her hand, and the dowsing rods would not work at all. They
wow.
Now that they moved, but they was without rhyme or reason. Then she tells me she's been hit by lightning like 7 times.
Oh,
and
goodness.
I said, "Well, good grief,
that makes sense."
That is that's part of the equation I hadn't worked in yet. So now
that's an interesting thing to look into, though, to really think about.
But once again, even as a firm dowser, I find them so, I don't want to say unreliable, but there are a lot of false positives that I still don't rely. I rely on them for my own communication, but I would never present them, as evidence to a client or anything. Now, while we were there that weekend, you showed the episode of the Animal Planet's The Haunted that you had been featured on, and that was. The evidence that you had there was kind of
crazy.
Took me over the top to say, okay, the ghost box is not totally unreliable. You want to give everybody a quick synopsis of that episode in case they haven't seen it?
I'd met a group of kids, young adults at Henrington State Hospital out in Maryland, and they had been going there and investigating and asked us to come back to their house, investigate it. And I agreed to it. I felt sorry for him, and I went to their house on Halloween night of 2008. And again, I didn't even know I was a medium then. But her father had passed away in 2004, and they still lived in the house, actually where he had passed away at. And we had 3 warnings come through the box. The first one was get the dogs out, and there was a dog, Babe, that was in the room with us when we were doing the box in the master bedroom where the father had passed away. Then it was get out before furnace fire. Then we heard a gunshot and we heard burglary, and then it told us somebody would die. And excuse me, and I even asked the box, which they didn't show on the show. I said, how many people will be involved in the burglary? And it said 4 black males and a female. And it told us that Scott would be involved. Well, the show actually showed it as Scott had lived there after we had done our investigation, but he didn't. He lived there before, and Vicki had thrown him out because he was dealing drugs. She caught him dealing drugs. Well, 15 days after we were there, I get a phone call that Babe, the dog that was in the room with us, had passed away for no apparent reason other than her lungs had collapsed and she went into heart failure. Then on December the 5th, after we'd had the furnace, we had her furnace inspected and it, passed just fine. She came home and her house was really hot. She came home from work early and the front faceplate of the furnace had blown off and flames were like licking up on the wall. So like within 5 minutes, the house would have gone on fire. Then in late February of 2009, Scott was murdered execution style. And they ultimately arrested and convicted 4 black males and a female. The box kept telling us, we thought it was saying $3 at first, and then we went back and listened to the recording, it was $300. And it kept giving us this series of 3 numbers. They actually stole $300 from Scott. That's what they took in the burglary. And the 3 numbers was the time that he was pronounced dead. And also, in the episode, you see us do a house blessing. When we went to do the house blessing, and we stood in the street, and we had an ordained minister bless every single person that was going in. We were going in pretty much for, we were going to do spiritual warfare. We went in and blessed every living thing or person in that house except for one guy. And all of a sudden his demeanor towards us had turned. He was no longer, I want to, help you guys. I'm so excited about paranormal investigating. He was just really nasty and would not let us bless him. I got a phone call 3 days later that he had been stat-flighted to Virginia. His lungs had collapsed and he was going into heart failure, just like the dog. And come to find out, he had been going to Henrington at night and meditating. So he was ultimately what was bringing the very negative stuff into their house. And the father who had died was trying to warn everybody. It was some creepy stuff. It was, all those warnings came true. All of them.
Let's take another commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk. I want to hear more about Henrington. So,
okay.
Everyone, you're listening to Paranormal Filler.
Lockdown 2016 at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. June 19th, join Paul Bradford, Brian Cano, Christopher St. Booth, Deb and Nick Lance, Chris Debin, myself, and many more icons of the paranormal field. Enjoy a celebrity meet and greet, an investigation of the entire prison, including areas that are normally not open to the public. There's even a magic show by illusionist Reed Masterson of Impossible Magic. All this and a late-night meal with the celebrity guest. The proceeds from this event benefit Unity, a Journey of Hope, a charity that grants wishes to adults with life-limiting illnesses. Purchase your tickets now at lockdown2016.eventbrite.com or visit Unity, a Journey of Hope.org to learn more. Unity, a Journey of Hope, changing lives one wish at a time.
Welcome back to Paranormal Filler. I'm talking to Jenny Stewart. Okay, Jenny, now on Henrington, I suggest that every team, every serious investigator, choose one location that is reasonably convenient to them, that they can get into on a repeated basis, and do a study. Do a prolonged, don't just, go to Waverly once a year and, post your EVPs and tell your death tunnel stories. This is what you've done with, I know you did that with Henrington early on, And that's what one of her books is supposed to be about whenever she gets it all wrapped up. But thing is, I don't generally tell people to do it in such a dark place.
Exactly. We didn't know it was dark, though. We really, at first we didn't. It was, Henrington was one of those places that, and I said it on the TV show and I've said it many times, it was a paranormal playground. And it so was. It was a African-American TB hospital that was opened in 1923. And I remember early on, I heard a male voice say, we were guinea pigs for the white folk. And I just thought I was imagining it because nobody else heard it. And there was 150,000 square feet to this location made up of 18 buildings. And at one point, we brought in 17 investigators from around the country because for me, it's never been about like, oh, I'm going to hoard this. You know, this is my project and nobody else can touch it. And I just don't work that way. I wanted to be able to bring other people in to share, you know, Henrington as well. And everybody came in. We were doing a documentary filming. The last night at Henrington, we actually had an investigator get attacked. That whole week was weird. But Henrington, we spent months going out there, and it got to the point, Wes, we would turn a recorder on before we even got there, because we would get EVPs as we're walking on the property, or, you know, we would see things. It was just the amount of stuff that we experienced there was just insane. And I had actually did my training years ago as an investigator at Waverly Hills, right after it had been shut down as a geriatric hospital. It was still intact. It wasn't vandalized or anything like that. And so here I am. I'm going, I can handle a TB hospital. I've already done one. This is going to be cool. No. I got my butt kicked because that place during the day was totally different than it was at night. And it was like night didn't belong to you there. And that last night, the investigators were there. All of the psychics and the people that were sensitive stayed at my house. And we actually knew when they got there. It was weird. But we still have the audio. One of the investigators turned their H2 Zoom on from the minute they got there, and it stayed running all the way up until they left. And you would hear them before it got really dark at that night. You would hear them, and we'd always go to the children's wing. But they would say, "Can you make this meter like spike? You know, can you make this meter make a noise?" And it was a Mel meter, and you would hear it go off, and you hear all the investigators go, "Great job," but then you hear an EVP going, "Leave, go," and then another one, "Danger, not safe." What was good at Henrington was trying to warn them of what was really bad there, and I was so skeptical of an ovulus until that night. They had put an ovulus in the middle of the floor. This room that had concrete floor, and there was like a little porch off of this room. And they put all their equipment around it, and you hear the ovulus say, "Kneel." And one of the investigators said, "If you are who you say you are, who is your master?" And it said, a name, and told them to kneel. Well, then they go step out on the porch to take a break, and you hear the ovulus say, "Lonely, lonely." I mean, it repeated that like 3 times. Then one of the investigators just stepped back into the room, and you hear the ovulus go, "Happy, happy, kneel." And I'm like, okay, that doesn't happen with the ovulus. So that place was incredible. I mean, it's gone now. But what we ultimately found out was they actually built that location, Maryland did, in a location where it was very isolated. It was very hard for the family members to come and see their loved ones that were there. A lot of them, when they got dropped off at the front gate, they knew they were never leaving. And they used those patients for major experiments and did a lot of gruesome things to them to find a treatment for tuberculosis. In fact, one of the doctors that was part of the team that found the antidote to treat it was a resident for a long time at Henrington. So it's really it was a very sad situation to find all that out.
Now, from the time you started going there until they tore it down, I guess the question would be, did you? I'm not saying you didn't have encounters or didn't get data when you first went there, but did you find that as you became, I shouldn't even say you became familiar with the place became familiar with you, that things stepped up in every direction? Try bringing her back.
Every time I look at it, I kid you not. Poor Paul Browning used to call me when I lived, because we lived in a house we called the Hill House out in Maryland. And Paul would call, and we would start talking about Henrington, and the phones would just go wonky. Yeah. It was like, yes. Okay.
Okay, my last question, that before you got cut off, was, did you find that familiarity, either however you want to look at it, you with the location or the location with you, bred interaction?
I think that the more that they became familiar with us, and the more that they trusted us. And I truly believe that because they realized that our intentions, because one of the things I kept telling them, I had an experience where I was taking some of the new investigators that had flown in from Florida through the main building one day, because there was a post office and I wanted to show them that. And the further that we got into the building, I guess the more I was having trouble breathing. It was really, I was not feeling well. I just didn't feel like myself. And I remember Ray, he kept saying, "Jen, you don't look right." And finally, at one point, I said, "I've got to get out of here." And I practically ran out of the building. And as soon as I opened the door, I started gulping air, and I fell to my knees. And I remember looking at Ray and Lisa crying, and I said, "They don't know where they're at. There are hundreds of them trapped here, and they have no idea where they're at. Some of them think this is hell. That some of them really believe that they were, dead and in hell because of the dark stuff that was there." And I think that they really wanted me to feel, they wanted me to feel what they were, felt like as a patient. So, when you go back and listen to the audio and you hear your name become, a part of the EVPs repeatedly, or little girls run up. There was one of my favorite ghost box, or my favorite EVPs. I had just walked into the children's wing, and there was a lot of debris. The buildings had, were crumbling, and there was metal staircases, and you hear, it sounds like, a couple of kids running down the steps, clinging on the stairs, and then they run up to me. You hear them crunching across the, stuff on the floor, and it's like they leaned over the microphone and they went, "We love you, Nick," and they giggled, and then turned around and you hear them running back up the steps. And my son's name was Nick. And so it kind of becomes personal. And for me, I could never understand the connection. I mean, Henrington became such a part of me as much as I became a part of it. And I had promised them I would get you, I said, I will get you out of here. And Cardome, as important as that dowsing session was for you, and that made Cardome important to you, that night, the gentleman that was helping me do the attachment work, he asked me how I knew so much. And I said had attachments, and I said, explained I'd gotten so many attachments from Henrington, and I was scared to be outside after dark, and Henrington, had become something very negative for me. He looked at me and he said, "Did you ever stop and think? You did exactly what you told them that you would do. You carried them out of there." And when he said that, Wes, it was like a total 360. I'm like, oh my God, I never thought of that. So I want to believe in my heart that I did what I was supposed to do, and I did. I carried him out of there, and I set him free. But it was a very. Some people became almost addicted, almost obsessed with the place, and we would have to really start working away from that. But I think the more that they became familiar with us, the easier it was for us to get those types of EVPs and the data and things collected.
Now, it's interesting you said about carrying them out, because now in my time in the field, the one thing I have never had is an attachment or a hitchhiker. But after that night at Cardome, and I did my homework, and I was told that I had a very natural protection about me, and so I learned to utilize that, to use that to my advantage. And like my house is a no ghost zone. It is absolutely. That is, and I don't do it that much special. I don't sage it every week. I don't have stones buried in the yard. But through, and I'll just say sheer will and my mean radio voice, I mean, you know, that is the rule. And the only thing I do when I leave a place is say, okay, thank you so much. I don't care where you go, but, you know, you're not going home with me.
Right.
I make that clear. But I personally, I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't have to go above and beyond to protect myself. But I'm not also, that protection, I think, also limits some of my gifts. In other words, I have to really, most psychics have to learn to turn it off. I've had to learn to turn it on when I go in a place. So how did you make that transition from packing their asses out of there to
to get rid of them?
Well, I mean, you know, see, now when I go in a place, but now if I go in a place like that, now I do my little prayer and do everything I can to open the door for them, to let them go wherever the hell they want to go, as long as it's not with me. But to get them where they belong, in other words, not hanging around this earthly plane. But the concept of having things follow me out of a location regularly would just irk me to pieces.
Well, and for me, it's taken me. It took me, because early on, and I won't lie. I mean, when I was doing Henrington and opened up, and I was told I was a medium and all this, and things started happening, I was like, this is a curse. This is not a gift. Why do people call it? Because I really felt that way. And, you know, I think you hear people say, I'm going to do a crossing over ceremony. I'm going to open door. I think that they have to trust you before they'll go over. And I think that for some reason they actually did trust me. And I think because they knew that my intentions for Henrington were always good. And here's just a key note. Here's an example. Every person that worked on the Henrington project, other than myself and my husband and my team, and I'm not just saying this because it's my team, but our intentions were very pure. Every one of us, every other person other than us, have had some trauma. Now, some people could say it was coincidental, but we're talking they've lost their house, they've gotten divorced, they've fallen apart, relationships have ended. I mean, things that, you know, started happening very quickly for them after the Henrington project. Because the project, ultimately, not starting drama, but there were some people, their intentions were to come in and take the documentary from us. And, you know, take the, you know, project. And that was what they weren't there to help. They were there to, you know, cause problems. But for us, I can honestly say everything that's happened for me, as far as being, you know, put in the public eye, being able to do the work I do, being recognized as a medium, it all comes back to Henrington. And my whole intent going in there was to help them and to try to make sure that they knew that they didn't have to stay there. And I went back finally, right before they tore it down. And it's called, in the book, it's a chapter called The Final Walk. And I took some photojournalists with me to document it and stuff. And it felt so different. It felt so empty. And I just remember standing in the children's wing and I was crying and I said, they're gone. They made it out. But I think half of them ended up at our house in Maryland because that house got so bad, our house in Maryland, where everybody would stay when they'd come in and do the you know, project. It got so bad that a TV production company actually produced a TV show, so did to A&E, and we started filming and then bailed on it because we decided we didn't want to do it, but our house was that bad.
We're going to take one last commercial break for this segment of Paranormal Filler. We'll be right back with Jenny Stewart.
Learn the method at Bobby Mackey's with Brian J. Cano. Sunday, July 24th, Learn investigating techniques, participate in experiments, and come experience Bobby Mackey's firsthand. Join Brian as he explores the infamous Bobby Mackey's music world for the first time. His method tour focuses on the process, philosophy, and execution of paranormal investigating and is suitable for novices and veterans alike. Brian's goal is to take each attendee and alter their perspectives with critical thinking, basic techniques, and logic. Event highlights will be broadcast live by me, Wes Forsyth of Paranormal Filler. Be interviewed about your experiences as they happen. For more information, go to neverstopsearching.com. That's The Method with Brian J. Cano, Sunday, July 24th.
And we're back with Jenny Stewart. You're listening to Paranormal Filler. Now, Lockdown 2016. That's coming up June 19th, everybody. Jenny is one of the we'll call you a celebrity guest. I don't know about you. I don't like the name. People try to tag the two words that I hate being tagged with are celebrity and expert.
Amen. That's why you and I get along so well. That's why I love y'all to pieces. I always say, because I'm repped by Mark Tello with Ideal Event, and that's one thing that Mark does. He doesn't call us celebrities; he calls us talent. So
I like it. Of course, now you're in the same boat as me. You're in radio. I like the word personality.
Yes, I like that too.
Because that's really, when it gets down to brass tacks, that's all I am. Mm-hmm. I'm just a voice on the radio. Spouting stuff that may or may not be right. Now, now have you been to Ohio State Reformatory before? I know you've been there at least once.
Oh yeah, that's part of the spirit that made me cuss at Chris Maggard there last year. Last year, I did Lockdown last year as well, and I've also done. I will actually be at Mansfield, Ohio State Reformatory in May, and for the one that we're doing in June. So I'll get my feel of it for 2 months.
Kind of going back to the Henryton thing. Do you like going to a place that close together? Do you feel like it does kind of bring you a comfort level, make you one of the guys, as it were?
Yeah, I'm getting comfortable at Ohio, which, like I said, was really interesting when I was having, the brain aneurysm thing going on, and I didn't even know I had children. I would look at you and say, you're lying, I have no kids, didn't know my name, but I knew I was a paranormal investigator, which was really weird. And last year at Lockdown, Chris Maggard and I and a few other people, we were in solitary because that's where they had put Keith and I, and we had a really incredible experience. Me as the medium passing the messages, and Chris got a actual EVP to validate what I was saying. And so I think for me, the more I go to places, I think the more familiar they become with me. And when you're a medium or psychic, they say that you have like this big bright light around you, that they know it's you. It's like they see you coming. And, I used to be really leery after Henryton of going to places. In fact, Cardone was the first place that I went to that I actually slept in that I was okay with. Because I had learned, they're going to come home with me if they want to. And I think Ohio State Reformatory, I was really leery because of some of the stories I'd heard. But, I haven't had any problems when I've left there. In fact, Mark Tetlow, who runs owns Ideal Event Managed, he actually, we did a walkthrough a couple years ago it was the first time Ideal was there. And it was me and Mark and John Zaffis. And Mark felt like he had something either attach or follow him home. So here we are, we're trying to fix him up. But I like Ohio. I like the Reformatory. It's a beautiful building. I like doing the Lockdown because I think it's for such a great cause. And this year, which Deadman was supposed to have started advertising, what I'm going to be doing a lot of, because after I had the aneurysm, when I woke up and I realized what had happened, the first thing I thought of was, oh my God, I've lost my gift. I just know it. I know I've lost the gift. And actually, believe it or not, I am more connected now than I was before. So what I'm going to be doing is readings on site for donations, and all the money goes to the charity.
There, people, you heard it here first, because Chris Dedman doesn't advertise anything.
I know he doesn't.
Now, on the stuff not following you home from like Mansfield. Okay, now I have this theory. Now, as a psychic medium, you tell me if you think it might be rooted in something. I tend to think that the places that are, I'd say, fished out, because the place is still haunted, but the places that are regularly investigated, the ghosts that are there for the most part are there because they want to be there, not because of any, not because they don't know they're ghosts or anything silly like that. That's how I've my feelings on it. In particular, Waverly, but I call them tourist ghosts. I think they're actually
enjoy the attention.
Yes, when you get to a certain level of investigating a place, I think that a lot of times, and you may not even be dealing with the original occupants. I think that just wandering around the building saying, "Hey, talk to me, give me an EVP," blah blah blah, tends to pull in codependent wandering souls, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think what happens is when a place is first discovered, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital is a perfect example. I was one of the very first people in Old South before it became very popular and well known. And that place was incredibly off the chart. I mean, it was scary haunted. That place was really, 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 really haunted. And I think it's because there were, spirits that were there that may or may not. I'm not going to say they didn't know they were dead, but didn't know where to go. And I think after a while they moved on. And what you're talking about, the tourist spirits, the ones that, like the attention, moved in. And I think that it goes for a lot of other locations like Waverly and Ohio. I think with Henrington, we discovered that there hadn't been a lot. A lot of kids would go through there because it was the legend of the big haunt. If you can last an hour there, you're cool. But I don't think anybody had really went in there and did the work, as far as trying to communicate with them on the level we did. So I think what we communicated with there was truly those that thought they were trapped. Penhurst is another one, because Penhurst hasn't, up until recently, they weren't allowing a lot of people in there to investigate, and now it's starting to be investigated more. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that after a while, it's what's left over is the ones that really, and I'm not saying the places aren't haunted, because they are.
Right. I'm not saying they're not ghosts.
Yeah. It's just not the original ones, I don't think.
Yeah. The also, I use Bobby Mackey's as an example. I've been in the place dozens of times. I'm sure there's activity there. I've gotten some results there that I feel are very solid. But that place has had more priests go through it than the Vatican. But I'd say, okay, so you clear a place out. Let's say that they're successful, and they may clear that place out top to bottom. Next Saturday or next Sunday night, there's 8 people wandering through the building, saying, "Can
you talk to me?
Can you talk to me?"
Where are you?
What's the Bryant girl, whatever her name is, the one that got her head cut off. I mean, all that stuff. So I tend to, and I think that, now I even go a step further. I think that when we're in particular trying to summon a particular spirit, that oftentimes these impersonators show up, and they say that, "Oh, you want to talk to Claire Bryant? Hey, buddy, guess what? I'm Claire Bryant."
Person.
Yes.
Well, and I think too, what we need to realize too, I think some people don't even realize this, is that any kind of equipment that you use, you are giving permission for something to come through and talk to you. I don't care what it is. And you're ultimately opening that door. You're opening a door and saying, come on in, I want to talk to you. So I think that once the original residents move on, there's still that door that's left open because we're still calling it. And I know a few years back, people were talking about the more you start talking, because demonic cases were very, very rare many years ago, up until a few years ago. The more people call demonic out and say it's demonic, and the more that you talk about it and the more you call for it, you're bringing it in. And so it's not going to be as rare as it used to be because we're bringing that, in, we're opening that door. And I think it's the same thing with just everyday, average, earthbound, normal spirits.
Good, we're on the same page. We're going to have fun. Everybody, just to get one last plug in, Lockdown 2016. You can go to paranormalfiller.com. It's in the calendar. If you follow me on Twitter, you're probably already sick of hearing about it. If you want to go straight to the source, you can go to Lockdown 2016, all one word, .eventbrite.com, and or you can go to UnityAJourneyOfHope.org, which is way too long of a URL, but UnityAJourneyOfHope.org. Find out more about the organization. But I'm really looking forward to the event, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, Jenny, because I only get to see you like every 2 years.
I know.
How do we manage that?
I know we don't live that far apart anymore. That I'm in Indiana, so we're gonna have to get together more often.
But it amazes me. We did Cardome. Then I don't remember how many years it was till I ran into you at Bishop Long's event, and then next thing I know, we're rolling all the way back to this thing. So one of us is too scarce.
Yeah, we need to start making plans to, I'm getting ready to do a huge sound experiment at a couple of locations. You'll have to get in on that with me.
Go ahead and plug some things you got coming up before I let you go.
I will be at Mansfield the 22nd of May. God, you're right. You put me on the spot. Go to idealeventmanage.com to find out any events I'll be at, or you can check out my website, which is prrsociety.org, or find me on Facebook under Jenny Stewart.
Yeah, I think you toyed with a Twitter account briefly, but
I have it. And Justin Perry, I do a lot of events with him and John, and it's like I just saw him a couple weekends ago, and he's always on me. Get on Twitter. I'm like, okay. And ever since I had the brain aneurysm, my memory isn't as great as it was before. And so,
well, see, Twitter is perfect then because it's for people with short attention spans.
I see. That would be. Maybe I really need to try it more.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Once again, you can find out more of her events at Ideal Event Management. Easy to find on Facebook. And I just want to thank you for coming on, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Been fun talking to you again, everybody. This has been Paranormal Filler.
Paranormal